Let's take a listen to this video. This is Sanctuary Message Part 1. Let's dial in.
Greetings, friends. Today we return to our series on the Great Controversy. This amazing book traces the course of Christian history from 70 AD all the way down to our time and into the future. In this video series, we are looking at chapter highlights of the Great Controversy. Now, I encourage you to follow along by downloading your free copy of the book at greatcontroversyproject.org, where it's available in multiple languages.
Earlier in the series, we read about William Miller and the early Advent believers who, based on the prophecies found in the book of Daniel, looked for Jesus to come on October 22, 1844.
Now, the key verse upon which the Millerites based this belief is found in Daniel 8 and verse 14. And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Now, during the mid-19th century, most people believed that the sanctuary referred to in this verse was the earth. So the assumption was that the earth would be cleansed by fire at the second coming of Jesus.
I'm glad he said this. If you've ever studied the history, just the heritage of Adventist message, just the history in itself, there's a misconception that I hear all the time, even in a comment when I make videos about this and they would talk about 1844. I think what people don't realize, they think like the Adventist church was the only church who thought Jesus was going to come during that time. Actually, it was a common belief. One of the reasons why it was a common belief, the signs that happened, that was prophesied in Matthew 24, that the moon was going to turn into blood and the sun will not shine his light and the stars will fall from heaven. They've happened right around that time in the early 1800s, and at least 1700s, and one happened in 1800 as well. I don't have the exact date, don't quote me on that. But what they were looking at when these signs began to take place, it wasn't just Adventists or Millerite, and there was no such thing as a Seventh-day Adventist. It wasn't even the Millerites who actually came up with setting dates. Actually, there were a lot of denominations who were setting dates even before that. Many of them thought of the prophecy. Let me pull the verse. There shall be signs in the sun and in the moon, in the stars, right? And it's just when this happened, stars. So when the signs began to take place during that time, like for example, Luke says that there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars upon the earth, and distress of nation with perplexities. Men's hearts filling them for fear. Look what happened then. Then they shall see the sign of the Son of Man coming in a cloud with great power and glory. If you look at this verse, it almost tells you that as soon as these signs happen, Jesus returns. So the perception was, hey man, these signs took place right around the 1700s and and early 1800s. So therefore, Jesus is coming again. It was a lot of Christians during the time were saying this. It wasn't like something that it was just Millerites or Advent people who said this. For example, the sixth seal speak about this. He said, when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake. And we know this to be the Lisbon earthquake. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and stars fell from heaven upon the earth. And if you study the rides of the four horsemen studies, what you will realize here, this is the same sign that Luke speaks about, Matthew speaks about. Actually, this is mentioned throughout the Bible. I can find it in so many different places in the Bible. It's all in the Old Testament as well. So when this began to happen, look at what happens then. As soon as this happens, right, it says the heavens depart like a scroll. So if you're following the trajectory of the prophecy in itself without considering what else God might be doing, if you're not applying the concept carefully, you can see why they were setting dates. Because as soon as these signs happen, and imagine you were alive and you see the blood, the moon turned to blood, right? And stars fell from heaven, right? You saw the outpouring of the stars. And you also saw the Lisbon earthquake. So many continents were impacted by this. So many lives were lost. The sun became black, right? And it was called the total darkness. These things had happened. So, and then the Bible says the heavens departs like a scroll. Do you see why they were setting dates? Because from their perspective is, oh yeah, these signs happen. The next thing that's going to happen is Jesus is coming. So it wasn't just Millerites that was setting dates. There were a whole bunch of people setting dates. And I wish people would actually understand that. But Millerites did have a different view, and his interpretation wasn't correct. And I can agree with you. But you cannot say because he said the dates in and of itself that was wrong. That was actually a very common thing.
Earth would be cleansed by fire at the second coming of Jesus.
When Jesus did not come on October 22, 1844, marking the end of the prophetic 2300 days, there was great disappointment. However, those who truly believe the Bible continue to study God's Word.
Carefully reviewing the prophecies in the book of Daniel, they realized their calculations had been correct. All the events outlined in the 2,300-day prophecy had so far been fulfilled right on time. Therefore, they reasoned, something important must have happened at the end of this longest time prophecy of the Bible.
Eagerly, they searched the scriptures until they found the key. The answer was in Jesus, who is now serving in the heavenly sanctuary as our high priest. In the books of Exodus and Leviticus, they read about the earthly sanctuary set up by Moses, following the pattern given to him by God. In the book of Hebrews, they saw clearly that the earthly sanctuary was a type or symbol of the real sanctuary in heaven. They realized that to understand the ministry of Jesus in the heavenly sanctuary, it was important to understand what took place in the earthly model.
While these services are described in detail in the Bible, the Great Controversy gives us a helpful summary where we read, "Day by day, the repentant sinner brought his offering to the door of the tabernacle and, placing his hand upon the victim's head, confessed his sins, thus in figure transferring them from himself to the innocent sacrifice. The animal was then slain." This sacrifice was necessary because, as we read in Hebrews 9, verse 22, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins.
Following the sacrifice, the blood, representing the sin the innocent victim bore, was carried by the priest into the first apartment of the sanctuary called the holy place. Inside the holy place, the priest sprinkled the blood before the second veil, which was just outside the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant containing the 10 Commandments was located. This symbolic service continued day after day throughout the year, transferring the sins of Israel to the sanctuary.
In his instructions to Moses, God commanded that once a year the sanctuary was to be cleansed of the sins that had been figuratively transferred there through the blood of the sacrifices. We read about this very
Significant. Good point again. I know I'm speaking in between because I won't be speaking at the end. Um, Part of the critics that I hear online, and I don't want to spend time talking about them so much, is just when they speak about either the Adventist message or the 1844 concept, what they do not talk about is the parallel that is found in the model of the sanctuary. They actually don't study the parallel. They will simply say, "Oh, you said dates and this happened." First of all, it was William Miller. We weren't really Seventh-day Adventists, But anyway, William Miller was still a great man by any means. I'm not saying that to nullify the value of the man. All I'm simply saying is that they failed to actually travel far back into the Bible to study the sanctuary model. and actually see the typology. And when you see the typology and you carefully study what has been and that which shall be, and then you can better understand how William Miller came to his conclusion. Because there was like the sanctuary is to be cleansed. It's like, oh, well, the sanctuary is not the earth. We need to go study the sanctuary. So when they study the sanctuary and they begin to realize, wait a minute, no, we had the wrong definition here. It wasn't so much the earth. No, it was Christ moving from the holy to the most holy place to begin a work of atonement. That is what the Bible teaches. And they came to that understanding. Actually, when you study the seven churches, for example, um, in Revelation, there is, and again, this could be a really good study. I'm actually, I'm not done with studying this, but I want to put a nice series of PowerPoint about the seven churches because it gives you the history of the Christianity. But one of the things about the seven churches, when you read about the church Philadelphia, this was the only church that did not get rebuked. From a historical standpoint, this is the church of the Great Awakening. So during the time, this was actually out of this church came the Adventist movement. So it says to the angel of the church of Philadelphia, rise and these things saith he that is holy and true, and he that have the key of David, he openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth no man open. So you already have something here that's very significant: opening and shutting, shutting and opening. So that's already taking your mind back to the sanctuary. So Jesus closes one door, he opens another. So significant. Um, one second, my daughter is calling me. Anyway, I know your works, right? And I have set thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little faith, and has kept my word, and has not denied my name. This is crazy. This is significant because what happens to the Adventist faith? They were tested, and out of result of the great disappointment, some people denied the Lord, but there were many who kept the word of the Lord. They did not forsake Him. So, if you carefully study the church in Philadelphia, you will find out of that the Adventist message was also written in there. We are told that I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say that they are Jews and are not, and do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship at your feet, before your feet to know that I have loved thee. Now, there's a lot in this. We can actually talk about that, but it's not talking the word Jews here in no way saying that Jewish people are no longer Jews. A lot of people use this verse to say that Jewish people in Palestine are no longer Jews. No, that's not what this is talking about. Anyway, we can talk about this another time. Because thou hast kept my word and of my patience, and I will also keep thee in the hour of temptation. We shall come upon a world to try them to do that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Here is the message: hold fast which thou hast, and let no man take thy crown. So this is like exactly what we're talking about here, because they were tested. Many of them fell away. Thousands of them give up. 50% say, I'm going to hold on to the message, and they proclaim the message again. So, and again, it's good to study the seven churches, because in the seven churches, you will see the history of the Adventist church as well and how they came about from that.
There through the blood of the sacrifices. We read about this very special day in Leviticus chapter 16, which describes in detail how two kid goats were chosen, one representing the Lord, the other representing Satan. The goat representing the Lord was slain as a sin offering for the people. Then the priest would bring its blood into the most holy place and sprinkle it in front of and on the mercy seat, located on the Ark of the Covenant. The blood was also sprinkled on the altar of incense in the holy place.
Then, as we read in Leviticus 16, verses 21 and 22, the high priest would lay both his hands on the head of the live goat, confessing over it all the iniquities of the children of Israel and all their transgressions, putting them on the head of the goat, and then sending it away into the wilderness. The goat bears on itself all their iniquities. This goat represents Satan, who will eventually bear the consequences for all the sins he caused the righteous to commit, but which they confessed and were forgiven.
The whole ceremony, writes Ellen White, was designed to impress the Israelites with the holiness of God and his abhorrence of sin, and further to show them that they could not come in contact with sin without becoming polluted. You see, friends, there are important truths we can learn from the earthly sanctuary services. For example, a substitute was accepted in place of the sinner who confessed his sin, but the sin was not canceled by the blood of the victim. Nevertheless, a way was provided for the sin, represented by the blood of the lamb or other sacrificial animal, to be transferred to the sanctuary.
On the Day of Atonement, the high priest entered the most holy place with the blood of a special offering and sprinkled it upon the mercy seat directly over the law to make satisfaction for its claims. Then, in the character of a mediator, he took the sins upon himself and bore them from the sanctuary. Placing his hands upon the head of the scapegoat, he confessed all these sins, thus in figure transferring them from himself to the goat. The goat then bore them away, and they were regarded as forever separated from the people.
Brothers and sisters, these important ceremonies are not just some ancient rituals that took place thousands of years ago in the wilderness of Sinai. We read in Hebrews chapter 8 and verses 1 and 2. Now, this is the main point of the things we are saying. We have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord erected and not man. In our next video, my friends, we will delve more deeply into the ministry of Jesus in the heavenly sanctuary. Until then, I again encourage you to download your free copy of The Great Controversy at greatcontroversyproject.org.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. I love messages like this, and I love how simple they kept it. And as well, the humility and the right attitude. And I love all of that, man. I wish more of the critics will highlight that's the side of Ted Wilson. They don't do enough job doing that. That's part of my issues with them.